And CEO of the Family Policy Alliance, and it's great to be with you. And we're going to encourage you to please share this video, like it, comment on it as we're going through it. This is such an important topic, and we have such a wonderful guest with us here today. Did you know, first off, did you know that November every year is National Adoption Month? This is an issue that maybe Christians don't talk about as much as we could. It has very significant ramifications for our culture and the families in the United States of America. In November, we try to draw focus back on this and the role that we can play, whether it's with policy, whether it's through our local church, or with the blessings. God bless the people that foster children and adopt them and try to give each child the opportunity to live within their loving homes. And so we have just a wonderful guest, and her name is Dr. Sharen Ford, and she is the Director of Foster Care and Adoption for Focus on the Family. For 30 years, she served as the Colorado Department of Human Services in the Division of Child Welfare Services. She's one of the most renowned leaders and subject matter experts in this topic, and even served as the president of the National Association of State Adoption Programs and the Association of Administrators for the Interstate Compact on Adoption Medical Assistance. Welcome, Dr. Ford. It's a privilege to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Craig, for having me on your program.
Absolutely. And so paint us a picture. What's going on as we're celebrating National Adoption Month? Paint us a picture of what's going on in America today.
You know, there's two actual pictures that I'd like to share with your audience. One, it is National Adoption Month. And so across this nation, there are children who are sitting in courtrooms with their foster families, waiting for a judge to say, this is your forever family. And they get to hear the gavel hit. Sometimes the judge even invites that young person up to hit the gavel when he or she pronounces, this is your forever mom, your forever dad, this is your family. And there's excitement, and you get to see judges with positive tears in their eyes because they're building family. While the other picture that we see going on in our nation, we see children who are being removed from their birth families, from their caregivers because of abuse and neglect, sometimes due to drugs and alcohol, sometimes just due to poverty issues. And kids are entering the foster care system, and judges are having to make those hard calls, and you don't see smiles, you don't see attaboys, you see kids being taken by caseworkers or by law enforcement to strangers, oftentimes to become their new foster home, while their parents are working on the issues that those issues that were presented before the courts. And so families are sad, families are hurt, children are hurting, the foster families are just trying to be there to love on the children, and the child welfare worker, the social worker, is trying to comfort that child and let that birth family know that the court is going to develop a treatment plan that will hopefully ameliorate the issues that brought that case to the attention of the court so that those kids can go back home again.
Well, it's a wonderful process when it works. It's a difficult process. It's very hard to observe when it doesn't. And I'm from Michigan, so one of my old analogies that I would use where I was speaker there was, do you want to have a Jerry Ford situation, or do you want to have an Isaac Lethbridge or Ricky Holland? You wouldn't know those names. You might know the first. But one was the president of the United States, went through the foster care and adoption system, and lived a great life, chose the right university to play football at, University of Michigan. And I'm just teasing now the time that we have. But Ricky Holland and Isaac Lethbridge never had a chance. We lost them, in the foster care system, and they died horribly at young ages. And people don't know about statistics like we have less than 1% of American children are in the foster care system, but more than 20% are of people incarcerated come from the foster care system. That, again, with that very low percentage of children that go through this, estimates between 60 and even as high as over 80% are the ones that are saved in sex trafficking rings. And so while we have these systems, they're not, there's a great need, for us to shore them up, to pour into them, and to recognize that, just with our values as pro-life individuals, that every life counts. Each one of these kids' lives counts, and it's worth fighting for. So as a practitioner, somebody who's tried to, through your career, improve these situations, what do we need to know that we don't know? What are some of the break points? What are some of the things that are showing progress in America that we could be getting behind to get better outcomes? Again, I gave these big statistics on an aggregate, on a spreadsheet basis, but as a Christian, every single life matters. So if we're saving 2, 3, 5, 10 more children, every one of those improvements matters. And what are you seeing out there, Dr. Ford?
I think one of the big things that I'm seeing out there is that government is realizing over and over again that they cannot do this work alone. That government's role in keeping kids safe is this big. Going in to do the investigations, providing supportive services, but the community's role, the community, and I'm talking about the church community and the larger community, their role is huge, as they could step in and look at how can we prevent some of these kids from ever coming into the foster care system. That the community can, are there daycares where kids can be kept safe and at an affordable rate, so that parents aren't making hard decisions and leaving kids unsupervised at home while they're working 2 jobs. Those children need affordable childcare. They need reasonable childcare, and so the community plays a role in that. The other thing is that when kids do come into care, how about the community stepping forward to saying, "Are you calling me to be a foster parent, God? Are you calling me to serve that child? Or are you calling me to serve that birth parent while they're going through their drug and alcohol rehab, letting them know that there's a watchful eye on their child?" Maybe you're supposed to be a CASA volunteer. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And so, you're not having a child come into your home by doing foster care, but by being a CASA volunteer, you're the eyes and the ears of the court. You're spending time with that child and their siblings, and informing the court through a written report and sometimes a verbal report about the things that you're seeing and hearing about how this child is progressing, so that the court can make an informed decisions about other things that impact that child and that will eventually impact that family. That there's a critical need for mental health services, and that's a community issue. Whether a county-based system or a state-based system for child welfare, there needs to be huge supportive services around mental health. We have a mental health crisis going on in our nation, and so we need those services for families to be able to access them, so that if they need meds, appropriate meds, if they need to be seeing a therapist several times a month, that those services are available at a reasonable cost for people to be able to access them, so that there's oversight. Children need to be have oversight in schools, and so when kids are missing from school, and I do realize that some families are called to homeschool, but even children who are being homeschooled need to have some oversight, knowing that those kids are safe, and so the community being a watchful eye. It makes a difference, because if you see something, just like when I said in the airport, gosh, if you see unsupervised luggage, say something to someone. Well, if you see a child who might be, looks like they might be neglected, looks like they've got bruises, say something to a credible person, do the report. You don't have to worry about investigating. If you tell, then someone else can do the investigation. That's their job. I think our school systems play a huge role in our kids being having a safe place to go and tell that something bad might be happening in their home. And so how do we support our schools so that kids know that they are welcome? They're kids of all ages, all hues of color. It's so important that the community is loving on children, because safe communities make it safe for families and make it safe for children.
Yeah, and I've got a quick question, then a point I want to ask your opinion on. The CASA is something I was unaware of. State appointed supervisor,
Court-appointed special advocate.
Special advocate, and
Yes.
that's who kids have that are in regular families. They have their brothers and their sisters. They have their aunts and uncles. They have other people. They have their neighbors, their friends' parents. And it seems like there's a disconnect in our country, particularly in the conservative political movement of saying almost adopting the same type of philosophy that people that choose not to work. There are progressives that would advocate, well, then you just give them money, because work is a choice. And they carry that over here and they say, well, this is what you proposed is going to cost money. And as a social conservative, those of us that are pro-life would point out these children don't have grandparents and aunts and uncles and others. By definition, they are wards of the state. And therefore, it's the state that needs to mimic that behavior and that support. And so the CASA, is that an actual 50 state thing, or is that a best practice that you ushered in Colorado and several other states have? But what do people need to know about that?
Well, CASA volunteers exist in many states across the nation, and it's not something that I ushered in Colorado. Colorado is a state supervised county administered system, and we have 64 counties here. And the predominant number of our counties do have CASA volunteers working through the court system. And once a CASA volunteer is identified, and it's a collective group of individuals, it's not just me as one person saying, hey, Judge, I want to volunteer. It's a collective group that gets training, has oversight, and gets assigned by the court a case to be that those eyes and ears of the court. And so there are 30 plus states that I'm aware of that have CASA volunteers, and that's something your audience could Google and say, is there a CASA program in my state? And CASA, and hopefully there's one near them, or if they are interested in volunteering, that they could connect.
Well, that sounds like a really, really, really important thing for Christians to be aware of. And our audience out there, by the way, we want you to share this. We want you to like, comment. Many of you know of the foster care and adoption system in your state. You've gone through this. You've got your kids that have friends that have had the blessing of being placed in a good foster home or adoption situation. We want to raise awareness. This is National Awareness Month on adoption and foster care. And the church plays such a big role. And one of the things, and we're not being judgmental here when you talk about drugs and addiction, it's a scourge in America. And it's one that I can speak to from experience. My father lived in addiction until I was the year that I left to go to college. I suffered in addiction until I got sober at 39 years old and went through rehab multiple times. And my oldest child was 9. So we're not trying to say people are evil or they're horrible or they're bad. Or that we're better than them. But this is what's going on in America. And my next question is kind of a leading question, but I want you to answer it, is it seems that we go right past the good of the child and we go to what makes the parents feel better. And one of the rules I learned when I got sober and I began my relationship with Jesus Christ, who freed me from my addiction, was that I can't give away something I don't have. That I have to improve myself, that I have to improve my marriage, that I have to become a better father and husband, and person before I could give that to other people. And it seems that in our country, we're dismissing that when it comes to adoption and foster care. Things like the passage recently here in America of the same-sex marriage, people by definition biologically that can't reproduce, people that choose not to raise their children with the people that they had the children with, whether that be through divorce or convenience or other arrangements that they create. And does that get in the way of what, science continues to show is in the best interest of the child, which is to have somebody playing the mother role and the father role cohabitating together and pouring their experience and what they do have to give to that child. And should we be aware of that, or are there things that we can do?
And all my years of working in state government and now working for Focus on the Family, I have been in awe in how a child can be nurtured and loved on and guided by caring people. And those caring people have been husband and wife. Because the role of being a foster parent, the role of being an adoptive parent, you're giving to someone who is needy. And we as individuals only have so much that we individually can give in and of our own strength. But then, as you mentioned, God pours into us. So as God pours into us, we can then pour into someone else. And so the balance of having a husband and a wife who take turns at pouring into each other, first of all, and then pouring into the child or children that they're caring for is huge, huge. And so when I think about individuals who are single, and I'm aware of many singles who have successfully fostered and successfully adopted, but they had a community around them that poured into them so that they could pour into the child or children that were in that home. I have in my career been concerned about people who are living in an alternative lifestyle, and the messaging that they might be giving to a child. We are made in the image of God, all of us, whether we choose to own that and walk in it or not. And so if I'm caring for a child, what am I sharing with that child? What's the image I'm portraying to them? What's the information I'm giving to them so that they can be who they were born to be, who God is wants to equip them to be. And so when my own stuff gets in the way of my doing the right thing by a child, I have a problem with that. And so as we now face in our society where marriage is not seen between a man and a woman, I wonder and I question and I pray. And I'm like, God, ultimately you're in control. So guide and protect the children who are in homes where there are individuals who are living outside of the bounds of a biblical marriage.
Yeah, and people seem to want to, this is my commentary, by the way, you don't have to respond to this, but they seem to want to attach all these fancy words to it in situations. And they don't want to talk about the underlying principle of what I'm hearing you say, which is there's selfish behavior and there's selfless behavior. And we all toggle between those two in every aspect of our life because we're all human beings on this earth. But when it comes to the care of a child, we need to keep care of that inventory of which one we're demonstrating. Adopting or fostering a child should be a selfless act, not a selfish act. And we have policies that get in the way of that, whether it's financial incentives that create perverse incentives for certain people that are not equipped to foster children, that they opportunistically look at it to fix their own problems. That would be in the selfish column. People that are not willing to give up a habit or a lifestyle choice for the benefit of that child, that needs that nurturing for a long period of time, whatever they have left between when they're fostered, adopted until adulthood, of modeling the family for their benefit. And it seems that it's very hard for our politicians to point that out. We live in a free society, so you can live as selfishly as you want with your sexual or other companionship relationships and the rest of it, but that does not necessarily mean that you have something to give to nurture and benefit the child at this time, and until you can get there. And it's a concern we have. Focus on the Family does such a wonderful job programmatically of letting people know how to get involved. Things that I didn't even know, even though we work in the public policy, is what the Family Policy Alliance does. As you know, Dr. Ford, we have 40 state organizations. You can look at the link here. They were found. We have a shared founder, Dr. James Dobson, of Family Policy Alliance, Focus on the Family, and the 40 state organizations. And we all want to roll up our sleeves. This is National Adoption Month. We hope and pray that you'll share this, that you'll comment, and that you'll too will consider getting involved. And so the next question I have for you is really more practical. We're with Dr. Sharen Ford, who has more than 30 years of experience leading a state organizations as well as a national trade associations on foster care and adoption. And we're talking to a Christian audience. There's more than 40,000 churches in the network of our alliance, the Family Policy Council Alliance of the state organizations. What's some practical advice that we could be doing to tell somebody who's overwhelmed when they've heard some of the dark side of what's going on in the foster care and adoption system right now? This is, I want to do something about it in the next year. What's some practical advice for them?
My first practical advice is for people to pray, because God will guide them through their prayer time of what steps for them to take. The word is very clear to say where God calls you to, he will provide for you. And so it's so important that people hear from the Lord. I think the second thing they need to do is to know what's in their community. You mentioned large numbers earlier. Nationwide, there's over 400,000 children who are in the foster care system. Nationwide, there's over 102,000 children who are available for adoption. But you said you're in Michigan, and you're other collateral states nearby that are listening to this program. It's important to know what's your state's number. How many children are in foster care in your state? How many kids are available in your state? And so when you even take that, then how about my county? You can go online and look under your state government and look up under child welfare, or you could contact me at Focus on the Family, and I could share information with you about the number of children who are available in your state, available for adoption, who are in need, or other kids who are in need of foster homes. Having that local information makes it real clear about some of the work that you can do. I mentioned earlier, CASA volunteer. Is there a CASA office in my community, in my county? Is that, God, are you calling me to serve that way? God, are you calling my church to serve? And I'm a deacon, or I'm deaconess, or I work in the church daycare, or our church has a school. Is there a way for my church to step up and play a role? And since I go to that church, how can I play a role in that? Oh God, maybe it's that you're calling me to be mindful and pay attention to some of the people maybe we've seen come in the church, and there's a foster family maybe who is already in our church. And what about us supporting that foster family who's caring for children already and wrapping supportive services around them? Because the average statistic for foster families is that in a year and a half, they're going to leave. They're going to stop being a foster parent because they're isolated and they're overwhelmed. How about supporting them and providing supportive services to that foster family so that they continue to serve as a foster family, and as a person, you serve that foster family? Or by the same token, you support that adoptive family so that they know that they are connected to the church, they are connected to their community, that people know about the work that they're doing. You say, well, they chose to do that. Yes, they did. They chose to do it because God called them to do it. So what role would God have you to play in loving on that family? And if you love on the family, you love then on the children, the bio children, the adoptive children, the foster children. You help that family know that they are connected to you and you are connected to them.
Well, one of my old lines, Dr. Ford, we're with Dr. Ford of Focus on the Family. And I'd encourage everybody here, we'll have links for you to check out Focus on the Family to get involved. They are a program service provider. They have wonderful educational resources for you if you're looking to be involved in this, as well as for parents. And we want you to check out Focus on the Family. They're a very important alliance partner of ours. We work on a number of issues. And it's such a privilege to have you here, Dr. Ford. I spent a lot of time working at Prison Fellowship. I had the privilege of Chuck Colson hiring me, and Jesus talked in parables and metaphors a lot, but he did give some specific things in a couple of places. And one of them was he said, do this if you want to know what I'll be scorecarding. It was both visit the prisoner and look after the orphans, and the widows. And so, and he's very, very specific about that. What would happen if you did not do this? I don't mean to threaten anybody watching this, but he goes, I don't even know who you are. If you otherwise have confessed your faith in him and show up and knocking on heaven's door, he's going to be saying, what did you do here? And we simply, we're not trying to threaten, we're not trying to cajole you, but we are trying to raise awareness here. November is National Foster Care and Adoption Month, to be aware that serving out what Jesus tells us to do can be one of the most beneficial things that you'll ever do in your life. It can be one of the most rewarding. It will bring you closer to Christ, and your own miracles will occur right before your very eyes. And the line I had, and I'm going to ask you the last question here, Dr. Ford, is God never made a throwaway person. He never has. And whether you're born or after you're born, or you're in the foster care adoption system, your parents are together, divorced, lost, as my nieces and nephews lost their father, my younger brother, after the Afghanistan war. And there's all sorts of situations, but there's opportunities for us to serve, because everybody counts. And so if you could, Dr. Ford, give us some encouragement. I know you've weathered a lot of and endured a lot of pain that you've had to witness, but with your long career, more than 30 years in this field. But give our listeners some encouragement as they go out of here and they're praying on how they might pour themselves, their time, talent, treasure into the foster care and adoption system.
Craig, I am encouraged because this is a season of hope, as we just celebrated Advent, the first Sunday that begins Advent on last Sunday. And I'm hopeful that God's people are praying. I'm hopeful that as God's people continue to pray, that he speaks to them. I'm hopeful that as he speaks to them, that they will take action, that they won't sit on their laurels, they won't turn a deaf ear, that they will say, oh God, you're calling me to this. God will now provide training for them, give them information of the steps to take, because our nation of Christians really do care about children of all ages, of all hues of color, children who have experienced horrible traumatic situations. But the people of God hear God's message in Psalms 68, that he sets the lonely in families, that he's a father to the fatherless. And so I know that the body of Christ will stand up and they will take action to love on the least of these in these hard times. And through their love and through their compassion, some of these children will go back home, because these families will not only love on the kids, but they'll love on the birth families where these children came from. That healing will happen, that wholeness, that restoration. If anybody knows about restoration, the body of Christ knows about it, right? And so these families who God will call will love on those birth families. Those kids will go back home, and the church will grow through that love, right? For the children who won't be able to go back home, they'll get a forever family through adoption, because God will call some to say, I'm putting you in this forever family. And the judge will smile, and he or she will hit that gavel and say, you are now a new family, just like a wedding.
Wow.
God will put them together.
That is inspiring. And I'll be praying on this, and I'll be talking to my wife and my children to see what more we can do in our local community.
Wonderful.
That's where it starts. A lot of people think that petitioning the president or the federal government is where things begin. This is truly an area where you can get involved locally, as Dr. Sharen Ford, our guest, said today. It's just a privilege to be with you, Dr. Ford. Focus on the family. Thank you, and God bless you for your devotion to this area and taking time to educate and inspire, and God willing, send our audience out into more active, sleeves rolled up participation in the adoption and the foster care system. If you're watching this, we want you to share it. We want you to comment. We really greatly appreciate you tuning in, because this is an area that cannot be solved, as Dr. Ford pointed out, by the government. This is an area where the government can merely facilitate the connecting of forever families with the children that are in need. And we know that there's a big role to play with over 100,000 eligible in America to be adopted today. So God bless you as you go out from here. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. And please share this, like it, comment on it, and look at what you can get involved in your local community, as well as through your local family policy council. And God bless you.